Look at his body underneath. He and his brother were the only survivals out of their family. 10 family members that have been killed.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 25 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org, our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. Today we feature the testimony of a reporter, Mohammed Omer, at the Russell Tribunal on Palestine. The Russell Tribunal met in Brussels at the end of September to consider crimes against humanity in Israel's Operation Protective Edge. One of the speakers was Mohammed Omer, a journalist from Rafah, which is on the Palestine-Egypt border. That's the city where Rachel Corrie was killed. Omer has written for The Nation magazine, Al Jazeera, and a number of European papers. In 2008, he won the prestigious Martha Gellhorn Prize. That year, when he tried to return to Palestine, Israel, he was beaten by border guards.
The reason actually I'm here, my name is Mohammed Omer. I'm from the Gaza Strip. I have been living in the Gaza Strip for all my life. And of course, the reason to be here, I know that going through Rafah crossing is one of the most impossible things these days. So I wanted to avoid going through Rafah crossing, but I wanted to come here because of this boy. I wanted to tell his story. He is unable to be with us here today. His name is Thaer Jum'a. His family were targeted by an Israeli drone missiles just a few hours before the start of the ceasefire, which means day 51 of the attack on Gaza. I'll talk about different issues. Yeah. Okay, so I am presenting 3 cases, and the 3 cases I'm quite familiar with. I have reported in all of them. The first one is, please don't shoot me. It's a man, Mohammed Tawfiq Igdeh. He's 65-year-old man. On the 25th of July, it was a Friday, when Mohammed's home was attacked by the Israeli military. This time, the Israeli soldiers actually got inside the houses. They break inside his house. I met with Ragad after the attack. His niece Ragad was telling me the story of what happened exactly, one of the most terrifying events that could happen to the family. They were sitting in a basement, taking shelter, in a quite peaceful apartment. Of course, there was the Israeli F-16s that were flying overheads in different parts of the Gaza Strip. The family had to flee inside this basement thinking that they are safe. Most of the neighbors tried to come in. Then an Israeli bulldozer came from the side, smashing the entrance of the building. Ragad tried to negotiate with the soldiers. The moment she asked an Israeli soldier, we want to go to the toilet, he says to them, no, you better do it in yourself. But that's not the story. And each time she tells them, when are we going to get out of here, he says, ask Hamas. Of course, Mohammed Qudeh, he happened to have a resident permit living in Spain for a long time. And the young woman we just show her photograph now, she was speaking to the troops in English. The children were screaming in Arabic, trying to tell the soldiers to stop it, to try at least to negotiate with people a deal that people get out, and then if they want to destroy the house, they can destroy the house. Muhammad he was fortunate to speak 4 languages: English, Hebrew, Arabic, and Spanish. But that did not protect him. One of the Israeli soldiers came from a short range, and we're talking about 2 meters, just the distance between us, it's even less. Like this, and then boom, killed him immediately. That's Mohammed Omer, who was executed in front of all his family members. The story is remembered by most of his family members and everybody in the neighborhood. I ran to this place and I met with the family, and I could see some terrible smell. What that could be? Well, I was thinking it could be animals like this. It could be dogs and cats that have been buried by the missiles. But it could be human beings too. Yes. And most of his neighbors, they've been killed. The house was destroyed over their heads. Some of these who have been executed, they have been taken to hospitals immediately. And others, they had to stay for 2 weeks waiting for an ambulance to fetch their bodies. And I will come back to that. And there is a failure of some international organizations that we need to mention. I feel the obligation as a journalist to make sure that these groups are exposed because they have not done their job. That's destruction in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Of course, those are homes of Palestinians. People are living here. And now, as you see, there is no life after this massive destruction. But I tell you, those people who had such damage, they are considered to be in Gaza as the lucky ones. There are others who have no homes at all. That's the case number 1 of Mohammed Omer, who was executed, clearly, no doubt. His relatives tried to explain that it was a short soldier with blue eyes in his mid or early 20s. She said after he shot, he was actually, I could see that he's crying. He got tears in his eyes after he shot my uncle. And it took them very long time to get outside and evacuate. The case of horror, and then all the situation that Palestinians have to face, is another case at Khuza'a again, in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. This is the Black Tuesday of the 22nd of July. And this is the Imam of Al-Mosque, Khuza'a Mosque, Khalil al-Najjar, 55-year-old. He was just sitting home together with his family when a number of Israeli tank shells hit the home, injuring many of his relatives and neighbors. Behind the holes, he was ordered to leave. The Imam started to shout in Hebrew. He speaks very fluent Hebrew at the soldiers behind a wall riddled with bullet holes. We are civilians, he says. We have children and babies with no medication or milk. And that was the case because Khuza'a has been under massive attack. It was one of the most terrifying attacks. To me, I see what happened in Khuza'a is much more devastating than Shuja'iyya. Shuja'iyya happened to be in Gaza City, where international journalists could be within 15 minutes in Shuja'iyya. But if you go further south, you will find devastating images of people who are killed and injured. That's a case not of execution with the Imam. He survived. But it was a different case of humiliation and using him as a human shield. He was taken by the group of soldiers in front of all the women that gathered around the neighborhood. The Israeli military put the women and the children on one side and the men on the other side. And then there is the Imam. He was basically naked at gunpoint, and the Israeli troops tried to take him all the way to the mosque. They asked him to run a generator, electricity generator, and to talk to to call for prayers. That's what they told him under gunpoint, and then he went all the way with them. But the message was not that, in fact. The message was, to tell all young people in Khuza'a to get outside of their homes and they will be safe. He was still held at gunpoint. And then he was questioned about Hamas and the rockets and where they come from. The Imam tried to explain in Hebrew that only rockets I know of are the Israeli missiles from the F-16s and the drones. But that did not save him, really. He tried to explain to them, if you, the Israeli intelligence, don't know about these rockets, who would know? They wouldn't come to me and tell me we are going to dig a tunnel underneath these buildings or fire rockets from here. He was quite tired, extremely exhausted after long, long days with very little water to drink, with little medications for his old mother. He tried to evacuate, carrying the body of his mother on his shoulders. But the soldiers would drag him all the way to the mosque, taking him to call for all young people. But when he called for all young people to get outside, then suddenly hundreds of those young people are outside on the roads. I felt inside myself sorry for the Imam, because he's done. He's a man who is the most trusted. The Israeli military have used his voice to attract the young people. They felt safe, they got outside, and then they were trapped from everywhere by the military. And those young people who were taken, all of them naked at gunpoint. I don't have much time to run through the details of what happened to them. And when I say gunpoint, one of them who I was able to talk to last week, I knew about what happened to him in July. He did not want to talk about it because he did not feel safe during the ceasefire. He said, no, they could come and kill me next time. So now I was able to tell one of the stories. The Israeli soldiers were having fun, in fact. Having absolute fun, killing people and torturing them like they were pouring some water on his trousers, and they say, if you are not going to tell us where Hamas locations are, we will burn you alive. He was taken on one Israeli bulldozer at gunpoint, and one of the Israeli troops with a mask came to him and brought a bottle of water and put it on his head, and then he started to shoot. And it seems to be a favorite game for the Israeli soldiers. Well, many of those people were taken to prison. About 11 or 12 have been released some few days afterwards, but the rest are actually still in prison. And they were, I hear from different ones that I met that they have been tortured, and one of them is even telling me that the Israeli soldiers crashed his testicles. Well, the man was ordered to take his mother, and then they tell him, if we hear any voice from the women, we will destroy the home. The third case which I'm presenting today is another important case, again from Khuza'a. We carried bodies on our shoulders. I mean, whose job usually is to carry the bodies of injured people? It's ambulances, right? Not donkey carts. That's what donkey carts are doing in Khuza'a, because the Israeli military did not allow ambulances to get into Khuza'a. Dr. Matz is going to talk about that now. And that's Dr. Kamal Hudayh. July 21st, 2014. He was in his private clinic. That's not a hospital. The road was completely blocked. The military would not allow anybody to get inside or outside. And everything that moves is subjected to be bombed by the F-16s or the drones. Even I have seen in my own eyes a dog that was just walking, and it was split into pieces. The doctor tried to evacuate. At around 6 a.m., the Israeli troops fired tear gas, leaving people stunned and in difficult distress. He tried to help everybody. About 2,000 people are gathering around him. Most of the neighborhood are gathering around him to seek refuge and to look at their relatives who are missing. An hour later at 7, an Israeli missile hit the basement where the doctor is taking shelter after his private clinic had been bombed. And when his private clinic had been bombed, the doctor himself had been injured. He simply removed the shrapnel out of his arm, and he continued to treat and to offer medical care for those who need the medical care. Of course, he continued that, and then he's telling people, let's get out of here. Everybody get out of here. Everybody walked out. They made sure that they have no clothes on top. Most of the men were undressed. They just want to prove to the military that they have no weapons to hide. But many of those people have been killed and injured, including the Ahmed Qudeh, the brother of the doctor himself. 130 people have been injured, including Ismaila Bourjela, an elderly man. And it has taken them 2 hours to get to the ambulances at the Nasser hospital. Khuza'a is in one of the most devastating areas, as you see. I'll just run through this very quickly. And there they carried the bodies and they take them to the hospitals. This was the case where they could see that those people are actually individuals and they are civilians. That's what happens when you get the Israeli military coming inside your house. Well, these are messages of warnings, photos that I have taken in one of the homes in Khan Yunis. And that's another photo you see, and that's actually the schedule of shooting. I don't know if anybody can see. It's a schedule of shooting for the Israeli military. That's the Israeli soldiers. They have, when they invade a house, they lift many of these papers, which you find everywhere. It's a program for them where they see who's going to be on shift. Yeah. During the Israeli bombardment, Dr. Qudeh contacted many officials, including the International Committee of the Red Cross. And they guaranteed that he will be getting outside, but that did not happen. And in this occasion, I see most of the people in the Gaza Strip are extremely disturbed by the performance of the International Red Cross. In 2008-2009 wars, and again in 2012, the International Red Cross had much better contribution to ending the crisis. Nowadays, you call the International Cross, there are no people responding to phone calls. If you're lucky, you get somebody to answer the phone call and then they promise you they're coming for you. But then you wait for the unknown. And most of the time you risk your life because the army have no idea that there is an involvement of anybody. I'm leaving here, but I would like to show some photographs. If you see in this is a home in Rafah, the southern part of the Gaza Strip. It's next to my grandmother's home. And talking about my grandmother, she had received the news that an Israeli military, and I'm talking about psychological warfare here, they are going to bomb a house which has a tuk-tuk. The tuk-tuk, there is a house which has a tuk-tuk, it has to be bombed. And then immediately, everyone who have a tuk-tuk evacuated their home and all the neighborhoods evacuated. Look at that. There are thousands of people running out in the streets to nowhere. There is nowhere safe to run to. And then it's because an Israeli military officer called and said, there is a tuk-tuk that is where the house is going to be targeted or hit. Well, that's one of the homes. And you see this F-16 missile. Yeah. The result, of course, is devastating. You meet with a lot of people who are facing all types of odds and difficulties. And I wanted to mention Mahmoud Al-Ghul. He's a 10-year-old boy. Look at his body underneath. He and his brother were the only survivors out of their family. 10 family members that have been killed. Luckily, he survived, together with his brother and the other 10 of his family, including his mom and dad, were killed. There's one thing which we always miss. International media is dealing with Gaza's numbers. 2,000 have been killed. No, there are among the 2,000, there is Muhammad, there is Mahmoud, there is Ali, there is Abdullah, there is Ghada, there is Haifa. All those people are just human beings with dreams, with aspirations. This is somebody who's having some homework here that you see. Now, the Israeli army, when they get inside these houses, of course, there's a toilet here. They can use it. But instead, the Israeli troops, this is the place where they ate, and this is the place where they shed in the same time. And that's what's left of homes that have been occupied by the military for a few weeks during the attack. I won't mention that, but I promised this lady that I will tell her story in the first time I get outside of Gaza. That's why I am bringing this, and it's off topic. Even those people who are dead, they're killed. They're dead again. They are buried once, and they are buried once again. Look at this case. This is the first day of Eid, and this mother was supposed to be just celebrating Eid. Instead, she heard the news that the Israeli F-16s hit the cemetery of Sheikh Radwan. She ran to the cemetery to find the bones of her own son, who was killed by the Israeli military as a fisherman some years ago. The last image of my presentation here is something which I want to end with, that there are thousands of people who are still at the UN schools and at governmental schools and hospitals. And of course, the war is over now, but I can tell you, during the war, we had one concern: how to keep alive. It was very stressful how to keep alive, but after the war, and I'm talking about these last few days, they were the most stressful times ever. Because you have no running water, you have shortages of medical supplies, you have shortages of electricity. Electricity, we are talking about 18 hours of power cuts. And all these issues are not really addressed by the international community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you. We have one question from...
Yes, just a quick question, and that is... Avocats Sans Frontières have published some figures. I just want to deal with displacement. I don't know whether you can help. The figure that they've come up with so far is 250,000 of the population of Gaza have been displaced by the killings of the kind you've seen and others. Can you help on that or not?
That's quite old figure.
What's the new one?
The new one is tens of thousands. We are talking 250,000 is too much, simply because many people have managed to get back to their homes. Some of the homes in the borderline area, they have not been hit, but they were under risk, so they had to run and seek shelter at the UN schools. And therefore, when it was safe enough, they have managed to return back to their homes, which decreased the number of homeless families in the schools. I would say tens of thousands, but not 250,000.
Now, listening to those first two particular cases, I think you've raised something absolutely vital and really, really important. I mean, you've got eyewitness accounts, collaborated evidence to say that there is summary execution. I mean, that is a terrible damnation on any army. Summary execution, and it's a war crime. But the question that goes through my head, first of all, could it just be some rogue soldiers? Could it be the atmosphere of impunity in the chaos of war? Or the most important question, is it some policy designed to try and terrify the civilian population? Because they're three very different points. And from living there and talking to many people, I would like you to try and answer that question. And secondly, to give us an idea whether likely are there other cases of summary execution.
Well, it's difficult for me to see the motive behind this. I mean, we don't know what the Israeli, why they would execute this and not that. I mean, clearly they have selected people who have a great prominence in the society to cause damage to the society. When you hear that this, as distinguished as Mohammed Tawfiq Qudeh in Khuza'a is executed, he has become like an icon for the execution. I mean, everybody is talking about his case. I think it's surely deliberate, that's no doubt about that. When it's a short range, that's somebody who's like this and then he's killing easily. And also it's to intimidate the population. The news was shared very widely among the population the moment it happened. They were hoping that it will make people flee their homes, but there is nowhere else to go, basically. So it's deliberate. I do see that, and it's also it's not a coincidence, and it's aimed also to intimidate and to cause much damage. And it's not the first time, by the way. There are many cases of executions, and there are many different cases across the Gaza Strip, many that we are able to report, and others we haven't been able to report. I mean, going at the Al-Fukhari area, I have been to see some families who are telling me some horrendous stories of people who have been basically killed. Their bodies were taken, they were dug under the ground, and they were covered completely as nothing happens. Now, where is the international community from all those people?
Before I go, I want to talk about one of our videos on our website. It's an interview I did with Lenny Brenner, the noted author of anti-Zionist works. Talks about how 50 years ago he was punished for taking part in the free speech movement at Berkeley, California, a punishment of years in prison. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.